Sri Gurupyo Namaha. Hare Guruvayurappa Sharanam. Bhagavatam Dashamam Chapter 70 to 75 are condensed in Narayaneeyam Dasaga 85, which is Jarasandha and Shishupaala Vadham. To brief the contents of this Dasaga of Narayaneeyam, Jarasandha, the king of Magadha, was the son of Brihadrada. His wives were the twin princes of Kashi. While he led a content life and was a famed king, he had no children. Frustrated over this, he retreated to the forest, eventually serving a rishi by the name Chakrakaushika. The rishi took pity upon him and on finding the cause of his sorrow, gave him a fruit that he blessed with fertility, instructing him to give it to his wife. The sage did not know that he had two wives. Not wishing to displease either wife, Brihadrada cut the fruit in half and gave it to both. Shortly after, each wife brought forth half a child. The two lifeless halves were viewed with horror, and Brihadrada ordered they be cast outside his city. A witch, man-eating demoness, Rakshasi named Jara, picked them up and put them together to carry them off. On their coming in contact, a boy was formed who cried out aloud. Not having the heart to kill a living child, the demoness gave it up to the king, explaining what had happened. The father gave the boy the name Jarasandha, and the witch, because he had been put together by Jara. This is also why Jarasandha could be killed only by splitting him vertically. Since Kamsa, Jarasandha's son-in-law, was killed by Lord Krishna, Jarasandha developed intense hatred for Krishna and was determined to defeat and kill Krishna. Jarasandha had many kings in captivity. The kings who were greatly tormented by Jarasandha by being kept in prison for a very long time sent messenger to Bhagwan praying slaying of Jarasandha. The trio, Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna, undertook the trip with alacrity. Disguised as Brahmin sannyasis, they approached Jarasandha just at the proper time. Jarasandha said, "I know that you are Kshatriyas, but as you are disguised as Brahmin sannyasis, I shall grant whatever you ask, even if it be my head." Krishna said, "Rajan, your generosity is highly commendable. We only want to fight a duel with clubs with you. You may choose any one of us as opponent. I am Krishna, your well-known opponent. This is Arjuna, the Pandava, and this is Bhima, his brother. Now choose." Jarasandha replied, "I will not fight with you, Krishna, because you ran away from our last fight. I will not fight with Arjuna also, as he is too young. I shall fight with Bhima, who is my proper opponent." Saying this, he went in and brought out two clubs and asked Bhima to choose one. Bhima took one, and then the fight began. Both were equally skilled and equally strong, and the hills echoed with shouts and the thunder clap of the clubs striking each other. This terrific duel went on for 17 days. Bhima was sad that he was not able to defeat Jarasandha. Then Krishna plucked a blade of grass, tore it in two lengthwise, and again put it together, the top end of one piece now touching the root end of the other. Bhima took the hint. Placing one foot firmly on the other's foot, Bhima clutched the other leg and wrenched it with all his force. Jarasandha's body was split into exact halves. Bhima put the two halves in opposite directions, crumbled up the two pieces of the body and threw the mass outside. His son Sahadeva came to Krishna grief-stricken. Krishna comforted him. "You can make amends for the wrongs committed by your father by releasing the prisoners and sending them back to their kingdoms with due honor." Sahadeva agreed, and ordered the immediate release of the prisoners. They were bathed and dressed in kingly dresses and given royal gifts and sent to their respective kingdoms. The citizens of Dwaraka were getting anxious. It was more than a month since Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna had left. Just then, the well known sound of the Panchajanya, Krishna's conch, was heard, and it was soon followed by a golden chariot with flying colors. All rejoiced at the death of Jarasandha. Yudhishthira was now the undisputed king and could proceed with Rajasuya. Elaborate preparations were made for the famous Rajasuya. Vast pandals were erected and decorated. The guests were all duly seated, and to the accompaniment of Vedic mantras, the Purohit bathed Yudhishthira with consecrated water, and now the lord of the yajna had to be selected from among the assembled guests. Sahadeva, the Pandava, stood up boldly and asserted, Lord Krishna is the noblest and greatest. Yudhishthira was extremely pleased and with great adoration presented costly garments to Krishna. He washed Krishna's feet with holy water and sprinkled himself and Panchali with that sacred tirtham. The Devas showered heavenly flowers on Sri Krishna from above. The vast assembly shouted, Hail, hail, Bhagavan Krishna. On hearing this universal acclaim, Shishupaala was unable to control his anger. He stood up and shouted, waving his hands wildly, Stop, stop, this atrocity. It is a sin to overtake all the sages and great kings here and choose a mere cowherd for Agrapuja. What a shame. And started abusing Krishna in many words. Hearing this unending abuse of Sri Krishna, some good persons in the assembly rose and left, closing their ears with fingers. Sahadeva became furious and drew his sword. Shishupala's partisans also rose, grabbing their weapons. Shishupala himself grabbed a weapon and buckler and jumped into the ring. Krishna, who knew the antecedents of Shishupala, he was a Parshada in Vaikunta, threw the discus and severed his head. Then a wonder occurred. A shining star slowly rose from Shishupala's body, floated through the air and entered Krishna. After the above interruption, the yajna proceeded in great style. Since Vishnu, Sri Hari of Krishna himself was the presiding deity, all the minor gods like Agni, Varuna, Indra, all personally were present to receive their oblations. Vedic hymns sung and kings from distant lands had come with rich tributes to attend the Rajasuya conducted by Yudhishthira. Duryodhana did not like all this prestige and glory accruing to his elder cousin Yudhishthira. It should have come to him. Before returning to his own capital, he wanted to visit the famous Hall of Illusion built by Mayan, the architect of Asuras. He went to see the hall accompanied by his brothers. Seeing a pond, he tucked up his clothes only to realize that it was a hard glass. Later, he stepped on carefully across a seemingly hard marble floor and found himself floundering in a pond. From the gallery above, Draupadi audibly said, A blind man's son is blindly walking. Swearing vengeance, Duryodhana stormed out. Though Yudhishthira and his brothers profusely apologized, Duryodhana would not be pacified. He departed to his capital Hastinapura, determined to avenge this insult. Krishna, watching all this from afar, smiled. The seeds of the Mahabharata war had been sown. Now we will see the slogas. Tado Magadabhubrada Chiranirodha Sankleshidam Sadashtaka Yuda Dudayamisha Bhumi Bradam Anada Sharanayade Kamabi Purusham Brahinot Ayachada Samagada Shavanameva Kimbuyasa. O Lord, the Magadha king Jarasandha had 20,800 kings as captives in his prison. The tormented king sent a person as a messenger to thee, the only refuge of the helpless. He prayed to thee to kill the king of Magadha. What more can be said? इयासुरभिमागदं तदनु नारदोदीरिदाद्युधिष्ठिरमहोद्यमाधुभयकार्यपर्याकुल विरुद्धजैनोद्वरात् उभयसिद्धिरुद्युद्धवे शशं सुषिनिजै समं पुरमियेध यौधिष्ठिरीम्. Then, eager to attack Jarasandha, the king of Magadha, they were informed by Narada that Yudhishthira was preparing to perform the Rajasuya Yajna. They were in a fix as to which of the two you should attend to. Uddhava pointed that the sacrifice demanded that all the enemies be conquered, so by attending the sacrifice, both the purposes will be fulfilled. With thy followers, though proceeded to attend the Rajasuya Yajna in Yudhishthira's city, Indraprastha. अशेषदैदायुधे त्वयि समागदे धर्मजो विजित्य सगजैर्महीं भवदपाङ्गसंवर्धितैः श्रियं निरुपमां वहन् अहः भक्तदासायुधं भवन्दमयिमागदे प्रहितवान् स भीमार्जुनम्. Though reached Indraprastha along with all thy wives, enhanced in strength by thy gracious glances, Dharmaputra with his brothers conquered all the opponents and amassed incomparable wealth. O thou who are the servant of thy devotees, was then sent by Yudhishthira to Jarasandha along with Bhima and Arjuna. गिरिव्रजपुरङ्गदास्तदनु देवयूयं त्रयो ययाज समरोत्सवं द्विजमिषेण तम् मागधम् अपूर्णसुकृतं त्वमुं पवनजेन सङ्ग्रामयन् निरीक्ष्य सह जिष्णुना त्वमभिराजयुध्वा स्थित. Hare, though three men then went to Girivraja, the capital of Jarasandha, in the guise of Brahmins, though asked for a festival of duel. Though made the king of Magadha, Jarasandha, who was lacking in good deeds, fight with Bhima. Meanwhile, though and Arjuna remained as onlookers for the fight. अशान्तसमरोद्धतं विडपपाडनासप्नया निपात्य जरसस्सुदं भवनजेन निष्पाडितं विमुच्य नवदीन्मुदा समनुगृह्य भक्तिं वरां दिदेशिदगदस्पृहान् अभिजधर्मगुप्तैर्भुव. Arrogant Jarasandha was fighting ferociously in the battle, though gave a hint to Bhima that Jara's son could be killed by splitting a twig. Bhima then tore Jarasandha apart and killed him. The captive kings were then released and though happily blessed them with supreme devotion. They were all devoid of all desire, yet though engaged them to rule the earth ethically and as per Dharma. प्रजकृषि युधिष्ठिरे तदनुराजसूयाद्वरं प्रसन्नपृथकीभवल् सकलराजकव्याकुलं त्वमप्ययि जगत्पदे द्विजपदावनेजादिकं चकर्त किमुकथ्यते नृपवरस्य भाग्योन्नतिः. Yudhishthira was then performing the Rajasuya Yajna, during which all the kings were joyfully performing the work allotted to them as servants. Though, O Lord of the universe, you were also engaged in washing the feet of the holy men and Brahmins. What can be said about the upliftment of the good fortune of the great king Yudhishthira? ततः सवनकर्मणि प्रवरमग्रपूजाविधिं विचार्य सकदेववाग् अनुगतः स धर्मात्मज वृधत्त भवदे मुदा सदसि विश्वभूतात्मने तदा ससुरमानुषं भुवनमेव तृप्तिं ददौ. According to the system of the sacrificial rite, the most noteworthy of the guests assembled was honored and worshipped foremost. While Yudhishthira was considering, he followed Sahadeva's advice and performed this worship to thee, the soul of the whole universe. This gave great satisfaction to everyone, gods and humans alike. ततः सपदि चेदिवो मुनिनृपेषु तिष्ठल्सहो सभाजैदिको जड पशुपदुर्दुरूढं वडुम् इति त्वयि स दुर्वजो विदधि मुद्वमन्नासनात् उदापतदुदायुध समपतन्नमुं पाण्डवाः. Just then, at once the king of Chedi sprang up from his seat, hurling a string of abusive words to thee. In this assembly, in the presence of great sages and kings, which fool is honoring this corrupt, cowherd boy? He exclaimed, saying so, he flourished his weapons and was soon confronted by Pandavas. निवार्य निजपक्षगान् अभिमुखस्य विद्वेषिण त्वमेव जगृषे शिरो धनुजधारिणा स्वारिणा जनुस्त्रिदयलब्धया सददचिन्तया शुद्धदीः त्वया सपरमेकदम् अधृतयोगिनां दुर्लभाम्. Though detailed thy allies, the Pandavas and thyself cut off the head of the advancing adversary with thy discus, which cuts the Asuras. Chedi had gained a purified mind, though his three births as Hiranyakashipu, Ravana and Shishupala were, he was constantly thinking of thee. Thus, he attained the supreme union with thee, which is not easily attained by the yogis. ततः सुमहिते त्वया क्रतुवरे निरूढे जनो ययौ जयति धर्मजो जयति कृष्ण इत्यालभन् खलः सदुसुयोधनो दुदमना सपत्नश्रिया मयार्पितसभामुखे स्थलजलभ्रमादभ्रमीद्. Then the most holy and elaborate sacrifice, the Rajasuya Yajna, being completed by thee, the people loudly returned, loudly acclaiming thee and Yudhishthira. The wicked Duryodhana's mind was full of jealousy at the sight of the enemy's prosperity. He was all the more confused when he mistook the floor for water and water for floor in front of the assembly hall, which was built by the Asura's architect Mayan for Pandavas. तदा हसिदमुत्थितं द्रुपदनन्दना भीमयोः अपाङ्गकलया विभो किमपि तावदुजृम्भयन् थरापरनिराकृतौ सपदि नाम बीजं बबन् जनार्दन मरुत्पुरी निलय पाहि मामयात्. Oh Hare, then a loud laughter arose from Draupadi and Bhima, instigated somewhat by thy sidelong glances, O all-pervading Lord. Immediately indeed the seed was sown by thee to rid the earth of its burden. Hare Guruvayurappa, save me from my ailments. With this, the slogas of this Dasaka 85 have been completed, and now we will listen to Sati Suresh's prayer song.
कृष्णं वन्दे परमानन्दं वन्देऽहं कृष्णं वन्दे परमानन्दं वन्देऽहं मुरलीधरा कृष्ण तुलसीधरा मुरलीधरा कृष्ण तुलसीधरा मनमोहना आनन्दनन्दना मनमोहना आनन्दनन्दना हे गिरिधारी वनमाली हे गिरिधारी वनमाली यमुना तीरविहारी हरि यमुना तीरविहारी हरि यमुना तीरविहारी हरि कृष्णं वन्दे परमानन्दं वन्देऽहं कृष्णं वन्दे परमानन्दं वन्देऽहम्